What do you think is the most important thing that you could do to improve your health? Sleep is what someone said. Anyone else? Water. The most important, all the things that you said are important. Your mindset, stress, all those are very important. But the number one thing that you can do to improve your health is to stop smoking. For anyone that smokes, believe it or not, the number one, there's a reason why if any of you have ever applied for a job and you get your health insurance from your employer, they all want to know, do you smoke? And they don't just take your word for it, they want to do a blood test to find out if you have nicotine in your blood. Why? Because people that smoke are anywhere 2 to 5 times more likely to die early. Now, even if you don't smoke, do you recognize that secondhand smoke still puts you at risk? There are cases of people that have been married to a spouse who smokes, have never smoked in their life, and still get lung cancer. So when I said, stop smoking, a lot of you are like, oh, that don't apply to me. But are you around someone that smokes regularly? Right? The second most important thing that you can do, the second baby step, is you need to know your family history. Raise your hand in here if you have spoken to your family members, meaning your mom, your dad, your grandmother, your grandfather, on both sides, and you know what diseases run in your family. Raise your hand. That's impressive. I can tell you that minorities, especially African Americans, don't know their history. Why is this important? When you sit down with your physician, or whoever your provider may be, you might see a nurse practitioner, you might see a midwife. When you sit down, one of the first things that we want to do is we want to get an accurate medical history from you. Why? Because what runs in your family will determine what type of screening that I do for you. For example, when it comes to prostate cancer, African American men have bigger prostates, and so therefore we have a high risk of prostate cancer. So that means that if someone in your family had prostate cancer at 55, I need to start screening you at 45 instead of 50. I had a patient that I diagnosed prostate cancer in at 38. His son is going to have to start getting screened for prostate cancer at 28. That is 22 years earlier than he would have otherwise. But if you don't know your history, you don't know what you're at risk for. The first time that you go to see your provider, 75% of that time should actually be taken during a history. Because the information that we gather, what type of lifestyle that you live, will have a big determination on how we take care of you. So step number 1 was what? And also minimize your exposure to anyone that smokes. The second step was know your family history. With that information, now you need to start seeing your provider regularly. How often should you see your doctor? Right? At least once a year. But if you're taking any type of medication, you should probably be seeing your doctor at least every 3 to 6 months. Right? Now, how many of us go without taking our car in for an entire year? Yeah. And what happens when you wind up taking it in after it's been a while? You usually wind up waiting until there's a problem, right? The story I like to tell is that when I was in college, I was going to make a turn one day, and I started hearing this clicking sound. I took it into my mechanic, and he told me that I had a crack in my CD boot. He told me it was going to cost me $50 to fix. That was a lot of money to a college student. So I said, it's just a clicking sound. I'm going to keep on driving. There's a reason why we call diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol the silent killers. Because you can have them for long periods of time and not have any symptoms until you suddenly have a heart attack or a stroke. And just on Friday, before I came up here, I sent an inmate out to the hospital because he came in saying, I'm not feeling well. Guards noticed that he had difficulty standing up. Blood sugar, 484. Wow. He felt fine until the day that he woke up. And now he was at risk for a dangerous condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, which is probably the main cause of people with diabetes dying. Right? Just because you feel okay, or just because you can ignore the problem and go to work, doesn't mean that you are okay. Get your $50 problem fixed before it becomes a $500 problem. So step number 1 is And minimize your exposure to secondhand smoke. Step number 2 is? Step number 3? Regular doctor's visit at least once a year, and if your doctor needs to see you more often, go in. It's much easier to be preventative and taking care of your health than it is to be fixing the problem. Unfortunately, the American health system works on fixing problems after they occur rather than preventing. Right? But if you stay ahead of the game, it's much cheaper and it's much easier to do. How many people in here know that you can actually reverse diabetes? Yes, you can reverse diabetes by following these next steps. After you're seeing your doctor, after you're getting regular help, you need to start moving. Now, does that mean that you need to go out and do an Ironman marathon or a competition? No. Get moving means exactly that. Get up off the couch and start moving. You can start with as little as 250 steps a day, with a goal to get up to 5,000 to 10,000 steps a day. But studies show that if you walk 150 minutes per week, that's 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. You can get your weekends off. But if you walk 150 minutes per week, your risk of heart attack and stroke will go down significantly. If you're walking for 30 minutes a day, you're likely burning an additional 250 to 500 calories a day. All the men, raise your hand. I want you to know that as men, you set the tone for the health of your children. Yeah, the health of your child, whether they become obese or not, whether they're going to be active as an adult, is most closely tied to the activity level of fathers. Dads who exercise, who take care of themselves, are much more likely to have kids who take care of themselves even into adulthood. And believe it or not, this correlation is even stronger with your daughters than it is with your sons. I didn't believe that too much when I first heard the statistic, but I have to say that with my 6-year-old, she sees me working out, and from the age of 2, she would come up alongside me and she'd try to do push-ups and stuff with me at home. At the age of 3, my 3-year-old daughter is able to do a pull-up on her own. I don't know about y'all, but that doesn't, maybe I'm just a proud dad, but that's impressive to me, right? But it's the example that she sees, and she wants to be strong like her daddy. She actually thinks that if she works out hard, she'll be able to take me, but that's part of the reason why I stay in the gym. Make sure that I've always got the upper hand. Right? So step number 1 is? Step number 2? Number 3? Right? At least once a year, possibly more frequently if you're on medication. Step number 4? Start moving, get active. Right? Step number 5 is you need to minimize your caffeine and your alcohol intake. How many people here realize that caffeine is a drug? How many of you all remember that? How many of you were you aware that just like the Tide Pod Challenge and just like the cold water challenge, ice bucket challenge, how many of you were aware that there was a caffeine challenge going around? And that there were several kids that overdosed and died by taking as little as a half of a teaspoon of caffeine powder. Do you know why Coca-Cola is called Coca-Cola? When Coca-Cola first came out, it actually had cocaine in it. Cocaine used to be able to be purchased over the counter before we realized it was addictive back in the 60s and things. So Coca-Cola contained cocaine. It was a cocaine containing Coca-Cola. And they came up with caffeine as the way to addict you to their drink once they were no longer able to use cocaine. So that's how we started having caffeine. Caffeine is not a regular substance in any drink. It's added in there on purpose. Right? It's put in there to make you want that drink. And that's the reason why if you do drink a lot of soda or coffee and then you don't, you wake up with a headache, you're irritable, your coworkers are like, man, did you drink your coffee today? Did you drink your Coke? Do you need me to pour you some Mellow Yellow? Because you freaking out here today. You're going through withdrawal. Right? So caffeine is a drug. Alcohol. You have some doctors that'll tell you, oh, you should drink a glass of red wine every day. It helps to lower your blood pressure. Right? Now, I'm not telling you that you have to give up alcohol. I abstain from it completely. I abstain from it completely. What I am saying is that you need to know that the more you drink, the more risk associated with it. For women, drinking anything more than one serving of alcohol a day is associated with a high risk of liver problems, cancer, and a whole host of medical problems. For men, drinking more than 2 drinks on average per day is associated with the same thing. Number 6 is you need to pay attention to what you're eating. Right? If you want good health, not everything that's edible should be put in your mouth. Right? That does not mean that you have to become a vegetarian. It does not mean that you can never have your favorite food. But it does mean that you need to be mindful of how many calories you're taking in on any given day. Because weight gain or weight loss is a very simple equation. It's the number of calories that you take in minus the number of calories that you burn. If there's a positive number left on the end, you gain weight. If there's a negative number left on the end, you lose weight. So if you want to take in 3,000 calories a day, that's fine. But you need to burn 3,000 or more calories a day to maintain your weight. If you want to take in 5,000 calories, that's a lot. But you're going to burn it. Michael Phelps, when he was swimming, was on a 12,000 calorie a day diet. But he also was burning 12,500 calories a day. Right? Most of us aren't Olympic swimmers. So you need to be mindful of what you take in minus what you go out. What goes out will leave you with a positive or negative balance. Number 7 is you now have made the changes that you need to sustain good health. Now you get to enjoy lower premiums for the rest of your life. You get to enjoy quality of life. And you actually have the best form of wealth, which is your health. I can guarantee you that if you do those things, you will have better health. Now that we've talked about how to have your health, let's talk about how to have financial wealth. What you can easily access when a car breaks down, when something else happens, and you don't have to go in debt to pay for it, gives you a mental stability that allows you to be able to focus on continuing to build wealth. The second step after you get $1,000 together is to begin what's called the debt snowball. Right? Whether you have student loans, whether you have credit cards, it does not matter. This program always works. What you do is you line up your debts with the biggest amount at the top, the smallest amount at the bottom. And you make minimum payments to every debt except for the one at the bottom. That one at the bottom, you throw everything you have at that debt to pay it off. And once that debt is paid off, you take all the money plus the minimum payment that you were putting on that, and you roll it up to the second lowest debt. Some people will tell you that you start at the high, but the problem is that's going to be your hardest debt to pay off. And you're going to get discouraged, most of us. But if you start at the bottom, every time you pay off a debt, you get to see, I have one less debt. And you get to apply that to the next one. And by definition, as a snowball rolls down the hill, it gets bigger. When you do the debt snowball, the amount of money that you're paying on your debts keeps getting bigger and bigger because you're paying off the small debt and applying all of that to the next one. Just the mental satisfaction of knowing that I started off this year with 10 debts and now I'm only down to 6 lets you see that you're making progress and you're much more likely to continue with it. All right? So step number 1 is to save $1,000 for your emergency fund. Step number 2 is to put aside, is to begin a debt snowball. Step number 3 is to then save up 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Can you imagine what you could do if you were free of your commercial debts? If you've paid off your student loan, if you've paid off your credit cards, the only thing that you have left is a mortgage. Most of us are spending 40 to 60% of our household income paying off debts. When you eliminate that, that's like giving yourself a 40 to 60% raise, but you don't have to pay taxes on it. All right? So that's why it's not until step number 4 that we begin investing. And when we begin investing, our goal is to put aside 15%. Now, some of you are looking at me like I'm crazy. Nah, you didn't say I got to save 3 to 6 months of my living expenses. You're telling me that now I got to start putting aside 15% of my income? Let's do an average here. The 2018 average household income take-home pay was about $5,000 for a family. Right? 15% of that would be $750 a month. Can anyone guess what the average American household spends on fast food? Between $450 to $700 a month. How much do you think you have to put aside each month for 40 years to be a millionaire? Come on, give me some numbers. I only got 5 minutes left. I'll take it too long. Come on. How much? 500? 1,000? $200. $200 invested each month over 40 years gives you more than a 98% chance. And don't take my word for it. Go to any retirement calculator, plug in $200 a month at 10% return, because that's what the stock market has returned on average, simply investing in an index fund. You don't have to pay someone to manage your money. You put it in an index fund where a computer just matches the S&P 500 index. $200. 90, actually more than 90, it's like 99.7% chance that you're going to come out with $1.2 million. But every decade, every year that you decide to wait, it takes more and more money, because compound interest. If I put $1,000 in the bank and I earn 10%, at the end of the year I have $1,100. So next year I have that $1,100 earning interest, and it gives me $10 more. And that interest keeps working. It's making your dollars work for you and making the pennies that your dollars get work for you too. The longer it's in there, the longer it builds up. Right? Step number 4 is investing. Step number 5 is when you start saving for college education fund. You can take out a loan for your kids to go to college, but you can't take out a loan to retire. Right? A lot of parents will start putting aside money for their kids' college education before they've made sure that they're good. And what you're doing is making sure that your kids are now going to feel responsible for taking care of you, instead of being the opposite way around. Step number 1 was to save $1,000. Step number 2 was to build a debt snowball. Step number 3 was to. Step number 4, 15% of your income. Step number 5.
Start saving for college.
Step number 6 is when you now focus on paying off your mortgage. Right? And if you're renting, know that you're paying someone else's mortgage. I own rental property. I'm a nice guy, but I ain't paying nothing for nobody. When you rent my rental property, I'm charging you more than the mortgage on the property. So if the mortgage is $1,000 on it, I'm charging you $1,400. Because I'm making my $1,000 to pay my mortgage payment, and I'm making a $400 profit to pay for any damages, repairs, plus to make some money for myself. So wherever you're renting, you're paying more than the cost of that person having a mortgage. So if you rent, you really need to consider saving up money to come up with a down payment and buying. But since a mortgage is the biggest debt, at step number 6, you've paid off everything else. You're putting aside money for retirement, for your kids' education. Now you start throwing everything that you can at paying off your mortgage. Where am I at on this step? In March of next year, I will have paid off my mortgage. And I will be able to live like no one else. I don't say that to you to brag. I say that with a sad sense, because I am the only black person in my circle that's on step number 6. We don't talk about finances. My white friends actually get together and they compare and brag about how much is in their retirement accounts. I ain't never had that conversation with my black friends. Right? So change starts with you. This has just been a brief overview. If you want to learn more about managing money, I'll be here to answer any questions that you have at the end. I'll be here. But also, you can go to daveramsey.com and you can sign up for our Financial Peace University class. I actually teach these classes in my hometown of Omaha. And don't feel bad if it takes you more than once. I had to take the class twice before I got it. Right? But be the change. Now that you know better, I'm asking you to do better. And I'm not a millionaire because I'm a doctor. I'm a millionaire because I've been consistent in saving the money. $200 is all it takes to change your life. Most of us can afford more than that. The reason why I'm a millionaire at this point is because I have put aside that 15%. But you can do the same thing. And think about this. You may not have 40 years to retirement, but what about your kids, your nephews, your nieces? When you get them started, if you start someone while they're in high school, it only takes $100 if you're at age 18. If you can convince your cousin, your nephew, your nieces that as a graduation present, I'm going to put the first $100 into your retirement account and you're responsible for continuing it, it means before they're even eligible to apply for Medicaid, they'll be millionaires. We can change history, and by changing in us, we become an inspiration to the next generation so that we can sustain the change.